Time, 1 year. 365 days went by, 365 opportunities set aside. 1 month, 30 days came and went, 30 opportunities to connect with friends. 1 week, 7 days of good, clean fun, 7 opportunities to save enough. 1 day, 24 hours to talk with someone, 24 opportunities to walk as one. 1 hour, 60 minutes to touch someone, 60 opportunities to share heart to heart. 1 minute, 60 seconds to share WhatsApp, 60 opportunities to be a friend. Andrew C. Esco, Chapter 5. Typing to Labuan. Nothing that we do is done in vain. I believe, with all my soul, that we shall see triumph. A Tale of Two Cities. Charles Dickens. After completing my housemanship in the ivory tower of University Hospital, I joined the Ministry of Health Malaysia, in the middle of 1978. My first posting was to Taiping District Hospital as a medical officer. This is a small hospital with very basic disciplines such as medicine, general surgery, obstetrics and gynecology, orthopedic surgery, dentistry, oral surgery, and anesthesiology. My typing experience. Taiping is the second largest town in Perak with a thriving population of 245,182 in 2013. Located 48 kilometers north of Ipoh and 78 kilometers south of Georgetown, Penang, Taiping is famous for its Taiping Zoo and Night Safari, Taiping Lake Gardens, and Maxwell Hill. My wife also followed me and was also posted to Taiping Hospital as a government dental surgeon. Working in Taiping was an entirely different ballgame compared to working in the university hospital, which was a teaching hospital. The Taiping District Hospital was a service-orientated hospital, and thus there was no emphasis on training, research, or continuous medical education. In those days, there was a shortage of doctors and the patient load was heavy. The hospital had a vacancy for 15 medical officers, but at any one time, there would only be about 5 medical officers in the establishment. This is in stark contrast to the situation today where there are way too many doctors. The medical library facilities in Taiping were severely inadequate and the system was not at all conducive for any postgraduate medical education or research. Fortunately, the consultant physician at that time was very academic-minded and had a passion for teaching. He conducted evening classes to teach medical officers how to pass the MRCP UK Part 1 exams. This was Part 1 of the Internal Medicine Specialist Examination of the United Kingdom. All the medical officers who were preparing for this examination benefited from his teaching, including me. Outpatient department. For the first 6 months, I was posted to the outpatient department. The patient load was very heavy. On a typical day, I had to see close to 100 patients, and it was just way too much. I did not have sufficient time to take a proper patient history and conduct a thorough physical examination. We only had 2 medical officers manning the outpatient department, whereas we should have had at least 4 to cope with our patient load. The government was terribly short of medical doctors and could not fill the vacancies. Fast forward to the year 2020, where we now have a glut of medical doctors in the market. The oversupply today is such that new medical graduates have to wait for a year or so before they can start housemanship. During my time, we started housemanship immediately after passing our final year examination. Compulsory service in government medical institutions have been abolished today. In my time, we had to do 2-year compulsory government service. Medical officers today are employed on contract basis. In my time, we were employed as permanent staff. How the times have changed. Mobile health clinic. After 6 months at the outpatient department, I was posted to the mobile health clinic team. The mobile health clinic team consisted of 1 medical officer, 1 hospital assistant, 1 staff nurse, 1 dispenser, 1 attendant, and 1 driver. The mobile health clinic offered outpatient services 5 days a week, from Monday to Friday. On Saturdays, we rested. The mobile clinic van traveled from Taiping Hospital to the rural towns in the Leret, Matan, and Selama district. Upon arriving at the site, we treated the public using the van as a mobile clinic. Our van was stocked up with clinic appointment cards, case sheets, medication, syringes, needles, and other things needed to run the clinic. We offered consultation and treatment for simple, stable conditions and dispensed basic medication for hypertension, diabetes, antibiotics, deworming, creams, lotions, eye drops, and so forth. Patients requiring hospitalization or specialist care were referred to the Taiping Hospital via a referral letter. Our team left Taiping Hospital as early as 7:30 a.m. and returned to base by 4 p.m. daily on clinic days. In exchange for our services, some satisfied patients gave us fish, crabs, prawns, fruits, and vegetables to take home as tokens of appreciation. Besides medical practice, my wife and I also attended the Taiping Gospel Hall Church for Sunday services and weekly Bible studies. We stayed in a rented house which was about 30 minutes drive from the Taiping Hospital. My parents also moved in to stay with us in Taiping. MINDEF and my years in Labuan. After a year in Taiping, I joined the Ministry of Defense, MINDEF, as an Army medical officer on a 2-year contract. The government of Malaysia drafted me into the Army to serve in the Ministry of Defense for 2 years. I had to undergo a 1-month Army training course at Kinrara Camp in Kuala Lumpur, after which I was commissioned as an Army officer with the rank of a captain. After the commissioning, I was posted to serve at an Army hospital in the Royal Malaysian Air Force Base, RMAF, in Labuan, East Malaysia for 2 years. So towards the end of 1979, my wife and I left on an Army aircraft, a Charlie 130, from Kuala Lumpur en route to Labuan to report for my first tour of duty. The flight took us 3.5 hours before we touched down at the RMAF Air Base in Labuan. We were provided with free accommodation in the officers' quarters near the military hospital. My wife was also posted to Labuan District Hospital as a dental surgeon. Labuan RMAF Military Hospital. The military hospital in RMAF Air Base Labuan was a small setup with a facility for outpatient consultation and a treatment room for minor surgical procedures. My job was to look after the healthcare needs of all the Army officers, rank and file soldiers, Air Force officers, airmen, and their family members. I also carried out yearly medical examinations for all the soldiers as part of their service requirement. Patients who required admission or major surgery would be referred to the Labuan District Hospital nearby. The clinical workload was very light. I only got to see about 10 patients daily. In the evening, I played tennis, and at night I used to visit the office as mess for social gatherings, chit-chat, and refreshments. The beer in the mess was particularly cheap as it was a duty-free item. Life in the Army was very relaxing. Clinical work was minimal, and this gave me a lot of time to study for the MRCP, UK, Part 1 examination, Internal Medicine Specialist examination, which I successfully passed before concluding my tour of duty. As a captain, I had to wear an Army uniform at work. Thus, I would be saluted and called so many times a day by the rank and file, and I had to salute back as a sign of courtesy. Conversely, if I were to bump into any senior officer, I had to salute him and address him as sir, and he in turn would salute me. In the armed forces, discipline was of utmost importance. I was told that in the event of a war, the discipline of one's soldiers could very well determine whether they lived or died. Labuan District Hospital, since work in the Army was light, I volunteered my service in the government Labuan District Hospital. The medical officer in the Labuan Hospital was my friend and he allowed me to work with him. He was quite a good clinician and surgeon who was able to do appendectomy, hernia repair, conduct delivery, cesarean section, and so on. In those days, there was no anesthetist. The hospital assistant would administer the general anesthesia, even though he was not an anesthetist. A couple of tragedies in Labuan, they say life is short. I had a businessman friend in Labuan with whose family my wife and I were very close. It was very heart-wrenching when he committed suicide by hanging due to business failure and inability to settle debts. In another unfortunate incident, I lost one of my pilot friends who was in his 30s when his helicopter crashed in bad weather during a search and rescue mission. He left behind a devastated young wife and an infant. This incident was particularly heart-wrenching, and to this day, I still get quite emotional whenever I think about it. IT is all about WHO. You know, I got to know and made friends with senior Air Force officers, pilots, and their families. We used to invite other officers to our house for meals and fellowship. Sometimes, when I traveled in an army aircraft on official duty, the pilot would invite me to sit next to him in the cockpit. Once when I was sitting in the cockpit, I saw a genuine full-circle rainbow. It was breathtaking, to say the least. The panoramic view from the cockpit was extremely impressive and beautiful, especially during takeoff and landing. Even after my tour of duty, I maintained contact with some of the Air Force officers in West Malaysia. They say it is not what you know, but who you know. One of my bidder cousins was working as an airman in the Labuan RMAF Air Base. One day, he told me that he had been applying for a scholarship for many years but had always been rejected and was not even shortlisted. On hearing this, I approached his commanding officer, an Air Force pilot with the rank of major. He said, "Oh, I did not know that he is your cousin. You should have told me earlier. Within 3 months, my cousin received a scholarship to study aeronautical engineering in the USA. Considering the fact that my cousin had waited several years with no results, that was truly amazing, a wow moment. IT is a small world after all. They say that the world is a small place. One day in Labuan, I bumped into someone who said he recognized me but could not exactly place where he knew me from. As we continued our chit-chat, I found out that he used to be my mess scout master in Tanjung Malim. He was now working in the Royal Malaysian Navy base in Labuan as an admiral, a senior Royal Malaysian Navy officer. The world is indeed small, and you could bump into someone you know in the most unexpected of places. On the spiritual development front, my wife and I also attended an Anglican church in Labuan for weekly Sunday services, Bible study, and other activities. A truly valuable experience. Serving in the army was a valuable experience, away from the hustle and bustle of city life. This unforgettable tour of duty was second to none. The highlight of my army life was the annual regimental night held in the officers' mess. All officers arrived in style, dressed in their official regimental attire. Sitting would be according to ranks. A multiple-course meal was served according to protocol, and all the officers had to adhere strictly to it. We had to know how to use different kinds of knives, forks, and spoons for the different courses and correctly hold them. It was a solemn affair, with speeches, toasts, and so forth. No one would be allowed to leave until the commanding officer left. Fortunately, they gave us a rehearsal on training of cutlery usage and other protocols before the regimental night. Otherwise, it would have been disastrous. Labuan's duty-free perks. Labuan is an island located off the coast of Sabah. At that time, it was a tax-free port. Electronic and electrical products were far cheaper in Labuan. Imported cars were also very cheap as these were completely duty-free. Almost all Army and Air Force officers drove flashy and expensive cars, waiting to ship them back to West Malaysia at the end of their tour of duty. I bought a Honda Accord, and my wife bought a Nissan 120Y at a fraction of the cost in West Malaysia. We sent our cars back to West Malaysia via a Navy ship at the end of my tour of duty.